Our bodies don't lie. They are an instrument of truth. We can try to deceive them. We can try to deceive ourselves. But eventually, our body will find a way to speak to us. And that, a health crisis, for example, or becoming very overweight, or like a digestive issue, or that can really take us into that underworld. So we learn to become honest with ourselves. So we learn to call our power back, and we stop falling for self-deceit.
2, 1, 0.
Hi, and welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. This is your host, Orion, and today I am with the lovely Ximy Gonzalez. Ximy draws from her 24 years career in holistic health, fitness, beauty, media, and entertainment to empower women to heal their painful relationship to food, exercise, and body image. Coach and consultant, author, producer of 7 Body Basics, mentor to holistic health coaches, international speaker, TV wellness bombshell, and the founder of the Bombshell Formula. In this episode, she shared her incredible journey and her enlightenment moment where she all of a sudden changed her whole approach to body image, relating to beauty and the way she saw beauty in herself and in others, which made her an incredible love driven coach. We also spoke about your relationship with yourself, your relationship with food, and how to connect to even more self love and self care. And now, without further ado, on to the show. Hey, Amy, welcome to the podcast. It is such a pleasure having you here. Thank you for being here.
Well, the pleasure is mine. Thank you so much for having me.
Before we begin, maybe you can share one of your best childhood memories.
Oh, for sure. Being on the beach, barefoot, full of salty water on my skin, tangled hair, being sun kissed, and just feeling wild, free, and fully connected to source. So I think that's my childhood memory that I treasure the most. And in doing all of my inner work and allowing my.
So you grew up by the beach?
No, I would go to the beach. I would go to the beach often, during our holidays. But that was like my most cherished memory. And what I was saying is that as I've done my inner work and reconnected with my inner child, I felt the call to move next to the beach. And now I live right on the beach. So I get to experience that bliss every day.
Yeah, but I mean before we started, you tilted your computer and I saw the view and it was breathtaking. It's just beautiful beach, white sand, beautiful water. I'm like, oh, I want to be there. Right now I'm in Miami and it's raining, it's gray. So thank you for living through your view right now for a second. It was pretty. How did you become so interested in women empowerment and transformation?
Well, I think that it all started like with my own journey of disempowerment. So basically, my story is at very early age, I was diagnosed with asthma when I was 8 months old, and I was heavily medicated. I was in and out of the hospital, and I basically missed out on a lot of my childhood. And one of the things that I realized is that health is basically one of the biggest forms of freedom that we can experience. So by having not had my childhood and health, I was very motivated and very curious about what would be if I could become healthy and free to enjoy life and reclaim my innocence and my childhood. In that journey, the first thing that I did when I was 18 years old is I decided that I was going to go on a vegan diet because I wanted to take charge of my health. And while it helped me initially, eventually it destroyed my health. And so as I keep talking, I'm going to talk about the importance of all of those experiences because I'm going to tie them in here. So here I was once again struggling with my health. Then I eventually started to study holistic health, and that's how I reclaimed my health. And I started first with exercise, then with food, lifestyle. Then I started to understand the emotional aspect. And it was very beautiful because as I started to explore one realm, then I started to see the limitations in that realm and I became curious about another realm. And eventually, that led me on a beautiful and very interesting journey to understanding that this is really an inner process that we may start on through the physical realm, and then we end up going inside ourselves. And we were talking a little bit earlier, doing the shadow work and getting to meet those parts of us. So that's how I started, and I had the opportunity to work, coaching women for holistic health and helping them recover from different conditions. I was working on media as a fitness bombshell at the same time. I was writing magazine articles. I was lecturing internationally. So I had the opportunity to explore the area of health and fitness and beauty, not just through the holistic health and the fitness realm, but also through working in entertainment and also working with private clients and lecturing. So it's just been a really magical, and this is just me trying to summarize my 46 years being here. But yeah, that's basically where it all started.
So, how did you move from being so sickly to being probably like the poster child of health? How did you do this incredible shift?
Well, I think that it was a whole journey, and the journey was really to experience a lot of what isn't, and then from that place start to recognize what is. So for me, what isn't? Having other people tell you what to do and how to manage your body. What is going inside ourselves, becoming experts in ourselves, understanding the language of symptoms, and learning to respect what our bodies are telling us, honor it, and then take action based on that. And that was a whole journey that took many years to get to that point. Then today, what I do is I facilitate that process for women, so it doesn't have to take them all the years it took me to get there. So the end, you see, it's about learning to trust ourselves, learning to trust our body. My body has been my greatest teacher, my greatest guide. And, to be honest, yes, I've learned from a lot of different people, but always I'll learn the concept, then I'll use my body as a lab, I'll put it to the test, and I will allow my body to tell me if this is true or if this applies for me or not. And then by going through that process over and over again, I've gotten to a point where I'm so blessed and so grateful to enjoy robust and amazing health.
That's incredible. And, a lot of people look healthy, but then you look in their eyes and there is no spark there. There is no joy. They look the part, they smile, but there is something missing when I see you. I look at you, you feel very whole to me, probably because of all the inner work that you did. What was your relationship to your body before and today?
So, first, thank you for sharing your experience of me. And second, I would like to maybe suggest what that thing that you may see in me is. I think it's called life force.
Cha, bravo.
And for me, like, I understood that it's about cultivating life force. It's not about healthy in the context that they teach us about meeting some markers and some numbers and being compliant to that. But it's about tapping into something that's really deep inside of us that ignites that connection with source and with life, and you know how to cultivate that life force inside of you. And you are, in my opinion, 100% correct. It is a result of the inner work.
Amazing. And the relationship with your body and body image. How did that shift?
Yeah, so I grew up in the 80s, 90s. I remember that it was around the time where all the supermodels became like very popular, Cindy Crawford and and the Claudia Schiffers and all these women. And so as little girls, we were obsessed with these characters, and we really looked up to them. And I remember at some stage in my life just feeling very confused as to, okay, what do I need to do to look like that, because we project ourselves onto these outer images. And because we see that these women are in an environment where they're getting attention, affection, they belong, etc., then we start projecting ourselves onto that, and we start thinking like, oh my god, like I want to look like that. But is it really I want to look like that, or I want the things that come with that? So that was my introduction into having this concept. And then also in Colombia, like this is where I'm from, Colombia, South America, like there's a huge culture with beauty and with the beauty queens. And the whole country would stop when like the Miss Colombia pageant would come on. So there's like we're being bombarded like heavily.
Oh my goodness. I had before when I lived, we just moved here to where we are a few months ago. But before, my neighbor, she's in her 50s, she would go to Colombia every year to get a plastic surgery. Every year. That was just what she did. Like, that's incredible.
It's fascinating because like my experience of Colombian women is that Colombian women are naturally like really really magical and beautiful. I mean, all women are, we all are, but I'm speaking specifically about this country, right, my culture. And I think that there was a moment where the drug culture really permeated mainstream in our country. And what do I mean by that? That initially it was the drug dealers' women who had the ton of surgeries and the exaggerated like big breasts and all these things, and it just became the mainstream, and it somehow became aspirational for a lot of women. And then like they're just it just became this thing where women started to really become obsessed with these external enhancements, and I, as we start going into like where we want to go with this conversation, which is into the inner work, what I want to offer is that the seduction of that is an invitation into what I will be speaking about, which is our underworld. And it's an invitation to go through a process of transformation. But I'll just leave that part there. But yeah, so growing up in all that culture, and for some reason that just never appealed to me. And then when I adopted the vegan diet, I became extremely skinny. So I felt like, wow, I've reached, this place, only to find out. And by the way, all the positive reinforcement from the outside world of, oh my God, you look so skinny. What are you doing? And all this. And then eventually to realize how malnourished and how sick I was. So just to give you a reference, like I don't particularly weigh myself. I don't even have a scale, but I kind of know like what my body kind of is. So I'm probably like 60 kilos, which is like 130 something pounds, 132, 35, something around there. I was 100 pounds.
That's not good.
That is not good. And I was very malnourished and sickly, and I had gut issues, and I had hormonal issues and blood sugar. I was on the blood sugar roller coaster. Sorry, I mean, it was a mess. So then that right there, when I came to that realization, I started to connect with what you just said. And that's that, some people may look good to the outside world and the beauty standards that we've been given. But then when you take a deep dive inside into the reality and what their health really is, it doesn't match.
It's so true for anything in life. Even when you look at successful people, or even you look at spiritual people, you never know what's what goes on behind closed doors, and how they are really like. And I love what you said about the inner work. It's always about coming back to our inner world, and what's good for us, because this is what matters. what you are sharing about Colombian women, it's almost like they tap into an idea in the collective consciousness and they took it as their own, which we always do because we all watch the news or are aware of what's going on in the world to some degree. And so sometimes we can lose ourselves to what's out there, and even like other people's thought forms, and adopt them as our own. But when we are more centered and when we connect inside, we can find what is ours and what is not ours. We can even ask a question: Is it this even my belief, or is this is the belief of my mother, or somebody I saw online, or somebody in the collective consciousness, and make this beautiful separation to own who we really are. And I also really liked what you said about, yeah, you mentioned being rebellious twice in different ways, and I totally resonate with this because the way to get me to do something is to tell me not to do it. Like, now you know my secret. um, every time in my life where people were trying to tell me what to do, I mean, from the age of 15, because prior to that I was very much a follower. But when I rebelled completely, and even till today, I do a lot of what the opposite of what mainstream is doing, because I go inside more and I do my own research and I make my own decisions. And even for a rebellious whatever person like me, it's very easy to get sucked into what's out there, and not have this separation a little bit blurry, right?
Yeah, I think that like what you just described for me is like totally archetypal of all of us. Is part of our upbringing, and it's at the minute that we have an external authority figure, like a caregiver. A part of us initially learns how to belong through giving ourselves away and becoming compliant, only to eventually, and it can happen, most often it happens during our teenage years, that we realize we've given ourselves away, and then we go into the polar opposite, the other extreme, and then we become defiant, rebellious, and then we get invited into ourselves truly, and realize that the defiance and the compliance are two sides of the same coin. We're still making choices based on the outside world and external authority figure. And that's when we get invited into ourselves to start challenging, questioning what you were describing, and then realize that the path is not the path of the herd, not from compliance, not from defiance, but from our own personal experience, because we've actually gone through that process of internalizing information and then finding ourselves through it. So I can totally resonate with what you're saying, because I was extremely compliant, then became defiant, and then I was like, okay, well, now I'm curious. If I'm not compliant and if I'm not defying, who am I? And then this is one of the reasons why I decided to, okay, I'm going to ask my body. Okay, I'm going to ask my soul. Okay, I'm going to ask nature. I'm going to, like, just take it away from the humans and just bring it back to like us.
Yes, that's beautiful. So you went through transformation. What's your definition of transformation?
So I'm going to share a story that I feel very connected with. And that is a story of Persephone. And I hope that I'm pronouncing her name properly, Persephone. So she's in the Greek mythology, the daughter of Demeter. She represents daughter archetype and the maiden. So she represents her naiveness. And so basically, she gets kidnapped by Hades and taken into the underworld. Hades is the underworld as well. And then while there, she gets given the choice, basically, through the experience, to stay as naive maiden, or to go through a transformation process and transition from helplessness and disempowerment into becoming the queen of the underworld, like taking on the challenge, confronting the shadows, the fears, and then calling her power back, becoming queen of the underworld, and then becoming a guide to others through their own underworld. And so for me, the Persephone story is a representation of our loss of naiveness and a transition into higher levels of power. This is where we step into going through a rite of passage into womanhood, eventually to become the wise crone. So, our painful relationship with ourselves that we project onto other people in relationships, onto food, onto body image, onto exercise, cosmetic procedures, like you name it. All of those things are invitations. The pain created by those things are invitations that take us down into Hades, give us the opportunity to be victimized and stay locked in our pain, or use these as tools for self discovery so that we can look at the areas of our lives where we're bleeding our power, where we're losing our power, and go through the transformation and then rise on the other side as fully embodied um, crones and wise women. And that is what the name of my company is, Bombshell Formula. And that's what for me is a bombshell, is a queen of her underworld. And it doesn't mean that you never get invited back into the underworld. It doesn't mean that you don't experience pain. It doesn't mean that you don't experience fear. It means that because you've been there, you're familiar with the process and you trust yourself that you can navigate the underworld regardless of how many times life takes you there.
Yes, and life will take you there. Many many times. I feel like every time you go there, you get just a bit more wiser and and stronger. And I love what you said about, we can all feel like victims. It's so easy to feel like victims, and it's about taking ownership. And when we take ownership, we it's not about pointing the finger out, it's about pointing the finger at ourselves and seeing what's in me is there, because everything that is going on in the external world is a reflection of ourselves. And even though we cannot control external situations, we can always control the way we react to that and the story that we tell ourselves about the situation, and mostly the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. Am I a victim in this situation, or am I going to be step into the warrior archetype, or step into the queen archetype? Am I going to take charge, or am I just going to be like that little maiden and just going to live my life small and complain? And or am I going to, this is okay, it's happening, I cannot control the external situation, what can I do right now to make myself feel more empowered so I can transform and step into those archetypes? So even by having the intention of stepping into a stronger archetype, we can become stronger.
Yeah, and I love what you just said, and it reminds me of a prayer that I say every day. And it's, whatever people want to pray to or meditate to or set intention to, that's up to each person. The way that I say it is divine, sacred, magical source. Please grant me the serenity to accept the things you don't want me to change, courage to change the things you do want me to change, and the wisdom to discern the difference. That means that the outside world is not up to me to manage. I can't control the outside world. What I can do is I can manage my perception of that outside world, and I can change my story and my circumstances, through action, through perception. And the other thing is that, when it comes to archetypes, I also loved, how you talk about going from one archetype to another, because I think that that gives us option. Meaning, people think, oh, yeah, I'm just a victim.
It's very popular to be a victim lately.
Right.
Like it's almost like a virtue signal. I'm a victim, yay! Like no, you should not be rewarded for being a victim. I mean, like, okay, so I'm Jewish, and we definitely have some victim mentality in our culture, but we also have, we survived so many times, so we don't take the victimhood as okay, we were a victim, like physically victim of genocides or murders throughout the years, and yet if you see like the Jewish nations, there are 0.2% of the world population, which is like what, 15 million out of billions. And still, like, regardless of how many times they were going through the that melting pot, they're always like, they cherish life, they teach their kids about life. They moved from their homelands wherever they were, and they never looked back, and they were just like, okay, we're here now, how can we survive? How can we make life better? How can we live a more ethical life? How can we raise ourselves to be more and do more, no matter how many times throughout history they were crushed? And you see like big nations like the Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Greek Empire, they all come and go, and this little like tiny percent of the population is still like keeping their head up. And I think this is exactly because of that mentality of, yes, we were victims, but we're not going to let that change our lives. Even now, when anti-Semitism is rising like crazy, like I've never seen in the US, people are actually going and learning how to protect themselves. Like in my community, people are like, there was the Holocaust, and there is the never again, and people are actually buying guns and going to tactical trainings and putting more securities around their facilities, because we cannot be like, oh, poor us, we have to protect ourselves. We have to rise. And I think it's, for me, it's epigenetically imprinted for sure, a little bit of the victim mentality, but also a bit of the survivor mentality. And in my personal life, I don't want to only be a survivor. I want to strive. I want to succeed. I want to be more, do more, excel. I don't want to look back on my lineage and the suffering, and and measure myself as a person who is just a survivor. But I definitely want to be more and do more. I think I repeated myself, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think that what you've described is a perfect example, in my opinion, of when a group of people get taken collectively into the underworld, and how they navigate the underworld and how they can rise above. And does it make us closer together? Does it make us curious about what could be, how we could become better in every sense of the word? So that's like a perfect example or representation of a group, like an ethnic group going down into the underworld together. And what are the lessons? What have we learned? And what are we going to do with this experience? You can apply the underworld to an individual, to a group of people, to everything. And it's just this thing that just it activates this desire to thrive, to actually live. When you've been through a process of death, you know then you get inspired to, okay, how can I live more? How can I rise above? So I think that that's a beautiful example.
Yeah. What do you think are some tools for women to help them with transformation? I can share mine, but maybe you can share yours first.
Yeah, so what I was going to say in relationship to the archetypes, and like when we connect, for example, with the archetype of victim, we've all had victim like experiences, all of us. But the beauty of it is that there's a whole bunch of other archetypes that we can tap into. And so what I was saying is, if I define myself just through this one archetype, I am missing out on the possibilities of embodying the other archetypes that are going to help me come out of there. So one of the things that I do with clients is I use journaling as one of my main tools to navigate the underworld. And so I invite everybody to first connect with the victim and give it a voice. And it's like, you will sit down and you will purge and you will write how you felt like you were wronged, all the things that you feel hurt you, like you give that a voice. If you do not acknowledge the part of us that has felt victimized, and then we just go straight into this never happened, or or I'm gonna sugarcoat it or whatever, it's always gonna be there. There's a book, and I love the title, Feelings Buried Alive Never Die.
Oh, wow. It's a good title.
Yeah, I love the title. So it's about us visiting that part of us and allowing it to speak, because oftentimes our victim held things back. So give it a voice, and then you reparent the victim through different archetypes. It could be the alchemist archetype. Okay, so if my questions as a victim are, why did this happen to me? Can I use a different question as the alchemist and ask, why did this happen for me?
No, I like that.
Can I give it purpose by taking it from the realm of the literal, what happened to me in this physical world, to the realm of the symbolic, what happened for me? Can I find purpose? And then as I find purpose, and I understand that the purpose of us going into the underworld is so that we meet the parts of us that have lost power, so that we can reclaim that power. So if our life experiences have the purpose of disempowering us so that eventually we connect with true power within, then for me, that serves a powerful purpose. And it allows me to acknowledge, yes, there's a part of me that felt victimized, but yes, there's the other part of me that I've reparented and that I have now transformed into a high level of wisdom that allows me to, in my work, guide others through their underworld. So if I look at all the experiences that I've had in my life that have been painful and have brought me literally to my knees, and I get lost in that, I could be missing out on the opportunity to go through the transformation so that I could eventually have the empathy and the compassion of knowing what it feels like to be there. And at the same time, having the tools to know how to get out of there so that I can share that with others. So if the purpose of my pain and suffering was so that I could eventually give others the tools that are experiencing that to come out of that place and learn how to navigate their underworld, then for me, that served its purpose, and I am okay with things that I have experienced in my life. So that's how I would say that.
That's really beautiful. So my new website design, I told you, it's all about like the female archetypes. And then I did this very short Tony Robbins program. And oh my goodness, even Tony Robbins is now talking about archetypes and how to step into them and how to embody them. And one thing that he said that resonate with what you said is that it's the quality of our questions that determine our life. So if I can come from a victim place and say, why has this happened to me, or how can I be better, how can I step into a higher place, because our brains will always answer, will always come up with an answer. Why am I a victim? You'll get a big answer for why you're a victim. How can I be stronger? You'll get a different answer. So I love that, like stepping through the archetypes and asking the questions through the archetypes. So as a warrior, I will be in the physical world protecting myself, maybe taking martial arts, maybe doing whatever I need to do to protect myself and my family. But as the alchemist, I can connect to higher consciousness, God, and maybe take some of this burden off of my shoulders and just give it to God, angels, a higher source, the infinite something, whatever. Everybody has different name for it, infinite intelligence, and be like, okay, I'm in surrender to you, whatever you are, and I'm gonna allow some of this burden to be taken off of my shoulder. And then maybe I can connect to the lover archetype and just connect more into love and see everything that is happening from a lover perspective or from a mother's perspective. Because when a mother sees her child, even when he's misbehaving, she's got more compassion toward him. And so as I integrate all those parts of myself, I am more whole, and I'm not only in the rebellious part, which I tend to go to a lot, which not always serves me. But I can experience, so like you said, so much more than just one aspect of life, because there is so much more to who we are and who we can be in this world. And I believe that in the end of the day, all come back to love and connection, because I see that infinite something as love. So it all comes back to love for me.
Yeah, I can resonate with that, and that like this is a journey, like as I think I mentioned at the beginning, is for us to experience what isn't, so that eventually we can connect with what is, and that love is is what gets the world really moving. It's the huge source of inspiration. It inspires poets, it inspires music, it inspires like us to get up and go about our day. It's what is for me as well. So yeah. And I think that you know going back to the archetypes and what we were talking about, and it being part of our collective consciousness, and I think that as you were saying earlier, that going back to the whole concept of the victim, I think that one of the biggest challenges is the archetype of the enabler, because when we have a victim and we have an enabler, this becomes like a blood donor vampire type dynamic.
It sounds yucky.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but what happens is it's just basically it's an expression of codependency, because the victim needs the enabler, and the enabler needs the victim, so that they can maintain the dynamic. And one of the things that are seeing is that our society has become very enabling of the victim consciousness. And the thing is that while the enabler may seem so good and virtuous, it's actually what it does is it weakens and it disempowers us, because if we get enabled in our pain, and we get protected, and we get caressed in that, we get motivated to stay there because it's okay, and because we learn to get our emotional needs met through that. But then when we have somebody that challenges our pain in our society, or our victimhood, we think they're bad, they're evil. But what if they are the people that are actually inviting us, by rubbing our wounds, to realize that we have those wounds, that it's our job to heal those wounds, so that we can pull ourselves out of that space. So it's interesting how, as a society, we see the enablers as good and virtuous, and we see the people that challenge us and trigger us as the evil ones. But what if the purpose of the triggering is for us to become aware of the wound, sit in the discomfort of the wound, realize we're bleeding our power, so that we can be inspired and motivated to heal the wound, instead of expecting everybody to walk on eggshells around our wound. Do you want to know what the easiest way to feel disempowered is? Expect someone to walk on eggshells around your wounds. They won't. They'll just step on them harder and harder and harder. And imagine now becoming aware we've got that wound, healing it, and then people can walk and crush over that wound all they want, and we won't bleed our power.
I love that. I really like it. It reminds me of a concept from Kabbalah, which is called bread of shame. Is when you give a 15-year-old a Mercedes, and they didn't earn it. They didn't do anything. I say Mercedes, whatever. Let's say Lamborghini, whatever. Let's make it more extreme. Um, and they didn't earn it. They didn't work for it. They just got the gift for free, and then they grow up to expect things to just fall into their lap. But if you take the same teenager and you take them to volunteer in a homeless shelter and have them work and earn money, they will become so much stronger and more adapt to life than the other kid that just got everything handed to them on. And those kids will have different wounds. It doesn't serve them to get everything. And as a mom, I really try not to buy my child a little, even like $1, car toy when we go to wherever. It's really hard, but I remember this concept, and I really try to raise him to earn things. We're not there yet. He's 4, and my intention is that when he grows up, he will learn to earn more, um, on his own, and will understand. And I try to teach him about the world and other people and how other people live, and also about my childhood. My childhood was I grew up extremely poor. Like we had like we had to put buckets because the roof was leaking in the winter time. Um, but I grew out of that, and right now, thank God, I have good abundance in my life, and I want to teach him about the fact that nothing is given, everything is earned. And if you get something, it's a gift from God. It's not because you did something special. And you have to take your own actions, and in order to the right actions, to create a really good future for yourself. And it's up to you, and you have the power. If somebody grows up to learn that everything is given to them for free, they will never, like you said, learn the lesson of going into their wounds, staying in the pain, healing their wounds in a way that nobody can hurt them again, that they are not bleeding because they found their own strength on their own. It's like the metaphor of the butterfly and the caterpillar. If you help a butterfly get out of the cocoon, it will die because it never strengthened its wings enough to be able to fly. And you might look at this little butterfly in the cocoon and say, I can just do a little cut and just help him and he can just go and fly. But no, you're hurting somebody when you are enabling them, and you are actually cutting their wings, because they will never be able to soar unless they do some kind of serious work. If we're talking about humans, they will never be able to soar, and just will be in this very weak space for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, what that's beautiful, and I can connect with that. One of my mentors would say that when we rescue somebody, we teach them to give up because we're there to rescue them.
That is so strong.
Yeah, and and it's there's this part of us that obviously doesn't like to suffer over other people's suffering. And if we like really go deep down inside ourselves, it's part of the reason why we want to help others, is because we don't like to suffer over other people's suffering. And one of the hardest things, like I'm in the coaching business, and why do we oftentimes get into this profession is because we don't like to suffer over other people's suffering. We have a rescuer archetype, and then eventually we learn through experience that we can't rescue anybody from themselves, that attempting to is doing them a disservice, because trying to take somebody away from the pain is actually interfering with what could potentially be maybe their rock bottom that is very needed for them to sober up out of a very disempowering experience. And so, going back to how we've been taught to see things, and what if one of the most loving things we can do, and one of the hardest things we can do, is allow somebody to experience their own pain, so that they can find their way back. It doesn't mean turn your back. It doesn't mean witnessing them. When you can offer a bit of help with limits and boundaries around that help. If not, it becomes right the rescuer codependent relationship. But allowing somebody, because what builds self-esteem is falling on our butt and then picking ourselves up, because it teaches us self-trust. If I go and pick somebody up, they're not going to trust themselves. They're going to expect me to do it over and over and over again. And then we'll have codependency. I'll get my emotional needs met by picking them up and feel significant. And then they'll get their emotional needs met by being picked up and not having to do any of their work. So I'm basically enabling their pain, if that makes sense. So it's for me, what I've learned, in these years of coaching is about giving people tools so they can pick themselves up and they build self-respect and self-esteem through that process. There's a purpose why we get invited into Hades, into the underworld, fall on our knees, so we have a rock bottom. Because oftentimes what takes us down there is the things we get high on, a relationship, uh, drugs, alcohol, whatever. Oftentimes that takes us right back into that underworld. And the smack we get is what sobers us up and inspires us to navigate life through different choices and course correct. So interfering with that process can leave someone in a very weakened position.
Right. So, as the extremely loving and caring person that you are obviously are, how do you put boundaries in your coaching where like your instinct just goes to, oh, I want to rescue them, but how do you set the boundaries? How do you step back and allow the person to just be in their pain? Like it's easier said than done. How do you handle that emotionally?
Yeah. So the first thing is that I understand that their pain is theirs and it serves a purpose. I also understand that I have been invited to witness, to walk along, not to mother or to father them, right? I am a witness, I am a companion through their underworld. I share tools and they work with those tools. I can't take people deeper than what they're willing to go. I can't, I can't, they're in charge of their process. So the minute that I think that I can control the process, that it's in my time, that their healing is going to look like what I think it should look like, that their process is like I'm involved in it. So one of the things that I do with clients is when I start the process, there's a book that I have everybody read. One of my books, it's called Power. And one of the things that I say in that book is coaching training, yes, you. Because I'm not really a coach, I'm a teacher. And I teach people how to coach themselves. So I think, yeah, that's one of the things. And I explain, I am not here to be an authority figure that you can project mother and father onto so that you can comply and defy with me. This is about you going into a self discovery journey to move beyond the compliance and defiance, to learn to assert yourself and to understand consequence. What consequences are you willing to live with, and which ones are you not? If I try to rescue people, it means that, let's say I say to them, don't make this choice. But what if, like, they're willing to live with the consequences of that choice, but not with the consequences of the other choice? Does that make sense? So then I am basically choosing their life path for them, and then I would be responsible for the consequences of their choices. Does that make sense? Instead, what I do is I say, okay, this could be consequence here. This could be, what other consequences can you think of? And then out of all of those, which consequences are you willing to live with? Which ones are you not? And then based on that, you can make your choices. So it's always bringing everything back to them. And if, for example, we're working on food and they've gone off and they've had, like a binge, and I go, I'm excited when they do things like that. And I go, how did it feel? Because the invitation is inside themselves so that they can feel the consequence of their choice, and then they can be inspired based on consequence and on feeling it in their flesh and blood to make a decision about how they want to feel. If I say good or bad, they're going to make their choices based on my values, not on their values and on their experience. Does that make sense? So it's always about bringing it back to them, bringing it back to them.
It makes a lot of sense. Now, do you still have coaches?
I have one coach that his name is John McMullen. And, and it's interesting because so when I feel like I'm in a situation where I'm struggling, finding an answer or something, I call him, and the role that he serves is asking me questions. Um, so it's like when I get to ask myself questions, but I work very diligently to learn to ask myself those questions, because he won't be here someday, and I need to learn how to do this for myself. So yes, and everything around me, as I see it, is a coach for me, because when I see, I'm learning from my food garden that I'm growing. That coaches me about life. I'm learning from this conversation. I'm learning from my clients. Those are my greatest teachers. From my parents, from my siblings, from my friends, from my husband. Everybody, as I see it, is a teacher to me. So I'm always in this position of humbleness, curious about what the next second is going to teach me through. And because I see life archetypally, I don't see it as my husband or you, or I see it as the divine using a character to deliver a message and a lesson for me, so that I can deepen my understanding, so that I can grow, so I can connect with my blind spots, so that I can learn more and more about myself. So I'm being coached 24/7
I love that.
by the divine
Oh, so
through
beautiful.
other people.
I love that. I really love that aspect of what coaching is. Like everything is a coach. It's so beautiful.
Sorry, and if I may just add something to that, and that's why I use food, our relationship with food, exercise, body image, because the food will coach you. In other words, it will show you that it's not about the food. It will show you that it's about the pain that you're carrying, that you project onto food. Food is a coach.
So maybe you can share some tools about how to relate to your body as your coach and how to relate to your food as your coach.
Okay, so I get goosebumps with that question. It's so beautiful. I'd say that one of the most painful relationships that we have is with food. I could list a million things why that is. Um, One of them, is definitely the confusion that exists amongst experts and the different opinions, and like that contributes for sure. But the first thing we do when we're born and we're crying, we're in this new realm and we're in distress, is we suck on our mother's nipple for milk and for comfort. So we self-soothe through our mother's nipple. If throughout our formative years we're not given the tools to learn how to self-soothe, we will use our mouth, food, alcohol, drugs, cigarettes, biting our nails, sex, like you name it, to self-soothe. So when we start looking at our relationship with food, and oftentimes I see in my clients a very painful relationship with the mother energy and with nourishment. And one of the things that food teaches us is how we give our power away to others, so that they soothe us instead of us learning to soothe ourselves. So this is why we look for somebody to tell us what to eat. This is why we try to outsource everything related to our food, and we don't want anything to do with our food, not growing it, not cooking it, not, we want somebody else to parent us through that. I mean, like, we could go on and on and on. But one of the things that I've realized is that for me, food is one of the most powerful tools to allow us to heal our instinct injury. So, and this is important, because what is instinct injury, as I understand it, this doesn't just refer to our instinct, it refers to all of our inner guides: instinct, innate intelligence, intuition, and integrity. And so, what is instinct injury? Instinct injury is when I feel like I'm walking around with a broken inner compass, because I can't trust myself, I can't trust my inner guidance. And then I feel infantilized. And as I go into my child psyche, I feel like I need external authority figures to guide me and to tell me how to live.
Mm.
So I give my power away to them for guidance, and I don't trust myself. I trust them. So one of the things that I've understood is that the journey is to learn to trust ourselves about other people, ourselves about food, ourselves about anything in the outside world. So food for me is a super powerful tool to help us heal from the instinct injury and learn to trust ourselves, our body. When you eat, your body communicates through the language of symptoms. A symptom is our body's communication system to let us know if the choices we're making favor our survival or compromise it. When I have a good meal, for me, I feel energy, clarity of thought, no cravings, emotionally stable, satisfied, great digestion, flat belly. All this lasts from the moment I eat until the next 4 to 6 hours. That's a response to a good meal. That's your body's innate intelligence telling you, good job. We like what you fed us. Now, if I eat something that makes me sleepy, I can't focus, I can't concentrate, I am bloated, gassy, craving foods, sugar in particular, unsatisfied, moody, etc., etc. After the meal, because there's many things that could trigger that, but I'm talking about shortly after eating. Is that my body telling me what you ate doesn't favor our survival? It compromises it. So the purpose of symptoms is so that we can get that, activate that compass and go, oh, wow, my body doesn't like me to eat that because it makes me feel horrible. Let me course correct. But if I enable myself and go and tell myself stories. We were talking about the stories earlier, and I tell myself stories about how, oh, you only live once, and oh, everything in moderation, and oh, blah, blah, blah. Even though my body, the highest form of intelligence that I possess, is telling me, don't do that or else. But I try to dismiss it, and then I take a pill to numb me so I disconnect from the messenger. I'm going to feel lost. And we can take that example with food and we can apply it to every other area of life. So this is why I love working with food. It's physical. We start at the basic level of our being, the material realm, and we start learning the process through that. And then we can start going deeper and deeper and going into other realms and other areas of our life. But food is a great tool for us to become honest with ourselves. Our bodies don't lie. They are an instrument of truth. We can try to deceive them. We can try to deceive ourselves. But eventually, our body will find a way to speak to us. And that, a health crisis, for example, or becoming very overweight, or like a digestive issue, or that can really take us into that underworld. So we learn to become honest with ourselves. So we learn to call our power back, and we stop falling for self-deceit. That's, out of everything, that's what I think we're here for. And I will quote Dostoevsky, above all, do not lie to yourself. The underworld will show us all the areas of our lives where we're lying to ourselves and where we're setting our chessboard of our life to checkmate ourselves.
Beautiful.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, yes. So you were talking about connecting to your body as a campus to tell you how to be, what to eat. How about connecting to your body as a source of pleasure?
Yeah. So for me, food represents an archetype. The archetype of Venus, Aphrodite, so Venus for the Romans, Aphrodite for the Greeks. She's the goddess of beauty. She's the goddess of pleasure, comfort. She's the muse. She's the inspiration. She's about feeling good, about connecting with our body, sex, all that. And for me, eating is a very Venusian experience. What do I mean by that? Is that for me, like, I love food. I grow my food. I cook my food. I'm in touch with my farmers. And it's a source of, like, when I'm cooking, I am connecting with the senses. Again, Venusian, like with the smell. I'm looking at the colors, the sounds the food makes as I'm preparing it, the sizzling, the smell that comes through. All of that is like sex. Like, you are stimulating your senses and you're preparing to sit at a dinner table and bring something into your body. It could be a man's genitals, or it could be food. Does that make sense? So it's like, and I prepare myself through ritual by thanking every item on my plate and inviting it into my body. And then having this dance of the senses where I am tasting, where I am enjoying, where I am present to what I am eating, instead of dissociating and leaving as I'm stuffing my face to numb my body. Do you see the difference between the two? And the way that we've been taught to relate to food is turn it into a mathematical equation. Count your calories, count your grams, count your this, blah, blah, blah. Left brain it as much as you can. And that will be the easiest way to disconnect from that feminine energy, that Venusian experience of actually connecting with the pleasure of the experience of eating. And if you are in that state of stress, turning it into a mathematical equation and all that, you're putting yourself in a sympathetic state, and that is a fight or flight, and that interferes with digestion. If you see it as a loving, pleasurable experience, you become parasympathetic. I'm just salivating talking about this.
I'm
You
salivating.
prepare your body
Stop
for
it. Okay, no. Like, what are we gonna eat
you're
today?
preparing you're preparing your body for digestion, to receive, to accept. You're inviting, you're not rejecting. This is part of the painful relationship that people have with food. They've intellectualized it. So, one of the things that I like to do with my clients is, can we get to that place where we enjoy what we're eating? We love it. It makes us feel amazing. And then on top of that, it gives us an aesthetic benefit. All of that is Venus. The enjoyment of the taste, the feelings of having life force flowing through you, and then like connecting with your beauty through what you're eating. Because when you're eating well, it should support your skin, your health, your hair, your shape, like everything. Of course, you couple it with exercise and other things, but it's a foundation. It's about pleasure. It's about love. It's about connection. That's a key word, connection. That's instinct healthy for me.
Really, really beautiful. I loved everything that you said there, and I also like the connecting to our bodies. So I usually eat probably 90% organic, grass fed. I do not use microwave. And 3 days ago, oh, and I don't eat after 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. usually. And the other day it was 10 p.m. I felt I felt like my body needed energy, and I broke my own rules. I grabbed one of my husband's TV dinners because he'll eat those. And it was a Trader Joe's vegan green curry, and I put it in the microwave and I ate it at 10 p.m. And it was one of the best meals of my life. It was so good. And I felt great afterwards. And my husband was like, "Why are you eating so late? It's not good for you, blah, blah." I was like, "Shut up. I'm listening to my body right now." And I ate it and I felt amazing afterwards. And it was okay. It was okay to not follow my own rules at that moment, and just my body at that moment, she just needed something, and it was very delicious and I really enjoyed it. And I believe that enjoyment, because we can think about all the wrong things I did. It was late at night, it was microwave, it was a TV dinner, da, 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 da. But my level of joy that I got from that tiny meal was so tremendous that I'm sure it did magical, incredible things in my body, even though it wasn't the right things to do. What do you think about that?
I want to ask you a question, and that is, and this is why this part is so important. It's the ideas that I navigate my relationship to food through. Where did they come from? Was it that somebody assigned those ideas to me, or through, like me hearing this, me hearing that, doing research? Or is it that I have put every single one of those things to the test and I have reached the conclusion of this and this and this, like through having my body tell me this. Because the thing is, if for X or Y, so let's say that your body's okay with rice, like everybody's different. Let's just start with that. Everybody's different. And maybe there was something missing for your body in that experience, or maybe it was that somebody else had given you certain rules, and then you went compliant to those rules, then defiant for a moment, and then because you said you had this relationship with the compliance defiance, maybe that was right. So then, and this is so important to learn, because like we can get to see, okay, so if I am being compliant to rules that were given by the outside world, then I'm gonna have to defy those rules, and I'm gonna be dancing between compliance defiance, compliance defiance. Now here's the next level, and that is, okay, can I put myself through a self-discovery journey and feel what I'm eating, and let my body, through everything that I put in my body, and monitor, do I feel energy, clarity of thought, no cravings, emotionally stable, satisfied, no digestive distress after I've eaten it? From a physiological perspective, that is, as I call it, I hit the spot. But if from the emotional perspective, I am first complying and then I defy, I'm going to get pleasure in that defying, even if, for example, let's say in that particular case you didn't have an adverse reaction, but let's say that you would have felt tired and sleepy and craving other foods, and it would have sent you on a whole downward spiral. Do you see the difference? So this is why I'm asking you this. So what do you think, how would you define that experience after having gone through this thought process? Where was your digestion, your energy, your clarity of thought, your cognition, everything really good after that? Did you sleep really well? Like what happened?
So this is how I see it. The choice of organic and the choice of whatever I eat that is good for me is based on me listening to my body, and also all the knowledge I gathered throughout life about food, about what's good for me, about what's bad for me. And I really like biohacking, and I'm really into learning about my body and what's good for me. What I did at that moment is I defied not somebody else's rules, but my own rules of what I made up for myself for what's good for me or bad for me. And I felt amazing after that meal, and I slept really well. Yes. What did I learn? I learned to like, I know that when I eat gluten, for example, I feel horrible. Sometimes I do let myself eat gluten, but I know it's not good for me, and that for the gluten for me is sometimes a struggle. Um, but what I learned is that it's just okay to be okay with doing the wrong thing every once in a while, and as long as I'm mostly okay, I'm fine.
Let me ask you a question. Your body felt really good on it. Why is it wrong?
But it's not wrong. It was it's wrong because I know that microwaving food is not.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that part. Like,
Why is it wrong? It's wrong because according to my own rules for myself, it was wrong. But looking at it, it wasn't wrong. It was actually kind of fun, and I enjoyed it. It's not like I'm going to do it every night, but at that moment, my body was like, "I want it. I want it now. I'm hungry. We didn't eat much today. This is the most accessible, available, delicious thing I can have right now. So let's do it."
yeah, and then I can see like so many aspects of this, and it's amazing to get to like do this and witness it here. And and what I would say is this: is I would really sit with the experience, and I would really ask myself about my compliant, defined relationship with food, and with why is there a part of me that needs to have experiences of defying if I'm the one who's actually setting up these ideas. Does that make
Because
sense?
I'm an Aries and
Like,
I like drama.
Yeah, but it's this is I think the theme is that when we create rules that we feel restricted within those rules, there and we become authoritarian to ourselves. You see, because this is mother ego, father ego, child ego. Like if I apply the authority to these rules, then the child ego is going to find a way to defy those rules. And then we feel, oh, okay, like I got my power back from this experience. Does that make sense?
So interesting. I have so much more to dig deep into this. But you see, like I never ever would even think about the depth of your questions on my own. Ever. I mean like, oh, I'm just good. It's the 80-20 rules, blah 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 blah. This is really powerful.
It's about taking food as a teacher about ourselves, about our underworld, about why we make the choices we make, about our compliance defiance. Like, and I'm so grateful that you gave yourself the opportunity to go through that process.
I think it was also define my husband. 'Cause he, like, telling me what to do
Find your
sometimes,
husband.
and I'm just like, "No, I'm a coach, and I know what's good for me, and I'm gonna listen to my body because this is what I teach." Blah 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 blah. Or it's like you said, it's just like the little child is like, "No." Super cool. Very very cool. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing this with me.
And by the way, like I'm totally connected with you. Like I like pasture raised. Like and one of the things that I learned from my vegan experience is I don't do very well on plant foods. I do phenomenal on a lot of fat and protein, like um, dark meat, like all that stuff. And what's interesting, you were asking about transformation earlier, was that first time I ate that meat. And one of the things that I learned, like you're saying, the depth of these questions. Well, the vegan experience taught me a lot about our relationship with food. And one of the things that I learned was when I realized that my body was in a mess, and I needed to start eating meat. There was a part of me that couldn't get me to do it. Even though I had already done my research, I understood the reasons why I needed to do it, I couldn't do it. And it was because I wasn't eating vegan diet. I was a vegan. I was in compliance with an ideology. I was in defiance to the rest of the people around me. And eating that meat would have represented this question: if I am not a vegan, who am I?
It's identity. Wow.
Because my entire sense of self was attached to that experience. So I went through a death and a rebirth. And this is one of the things that taught me the power of the body and our innate intelligence. Everybody said to me, when you eat that meat, you're going to feel so sick. It's going to be so bad for you, blah, blah, blah. I put that piece of meat in my mouth. And it was the first time, literally in 8 years, that I felt like I had eaten.
Wow.
And I eat, let me put it to you this way, like I eat large amounts of food. Like I'm not one to be, eating 2 bites of dinner. Like I would sit down with a bowl of salad, rice and beans. You know what I mean? Like I would eat. And I had to eat so much food in order to feel what I thought at that time was satisfied, which was bloated and ready to explode. And then I had this meat. It was a small serving. And I was satisfied. I didn't have cravings. My belly didn't bloat. Like, it just completely knocked all of my ideas out of my head with that one experience of bringing it into my body. But then I had to go through the whole process of reparenting myself because even with that experience, I was so indoctrinated and attached to ideas and loyalty to a group of people and the fear of what they would think if I started eating meat and all that, that it was a problem for me.
Wow, I got goosebumps when you were talking about that, and the whole like identity and our like food as a source of tribal connection, and feeling like you are an outsider if you don't follow a certain diet or a certain ideology or think like everybody else. It's a really incredible journey of transformation every day, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and it shows us, eating is visceral, and it's our solar plexus, and it shows us the relationship that we have with control. Because for me, like, I'm not speaking for anybody else. For me, I realized it was an eating disorder because it was throughout my upbringing, part of me felt out of control. And I realized that the only thing that I could really control was food, and that I would find significance in, oh, why are you eating like that? Talking 1995, Colombia, nobody even knew what a vegan was. Yes, there was a few vegetarians here and there, but it was like this whole sense of significance with all this and being different and paying attention to and all this. And then it was about first controlling me, but then it became about wanting to control others and what they ate, and I became the food police. And taught me so much when I observe the arguments that go on online between vegans and meat eaters or whatever, and I can see myself. Remember, I say everything is a coach around me. I can see parts of myself. I remember how I felt, how I used to think, how I used to relate to food. It was teacher, one of my greatest teachers, experience.
Incredible. I definitely feel like I see so much of myself in you, and this is a like really I like love this woman. And I really appreciate you. And before we say goodbye for now, what are your three top tips to living a stellar life, and where can people find you?
Okay, so I think that the first thing is your underworld. When you're being called into your underworld, take the calling, go in there. It may seem scary, but once you let yourself go through that experience, you will develop such a deep level of intimacy with yourself. You will learn to trust yourself. You will learn to respect yourself. And the level of power that you find in your underworld is something that nobody can give to you. Nobody can take it away from you. That's empowerment, in my opinion. That's true power. That's the first thing. The second thing is learn to trust your body and learn to create the most cozy, delicious, beautiful home in your body, because that is the vehicle that you're going to have and have had from the moment you were born until the moment you go. Make it cozy, make it a space you want to live in. I can't think of anything more painful than to not be happy with our home, with our body. And I love the analogy of the hermit crab archetype, because it's like I've learned to create a beautiful little shell and a beautiful little crab. And everywhere I go, I take that little shell with me, my body, and I nourish it and I care for it, and it's my safe spot. So if you want to learn how to feel safe, you can have your external house, you can have your country, you can have your group of friends, your tribe, but your ultimate place of safety is yourself, your home. And, like, I love to walk people back to their home, like, invite them. And they are the only ones who can walk there, but I love to invite people to build safe, cozy home inside their body and themselves. And then the other thing that I would say is, you've been lied to about what health is. You've been told that is this sterile, disconnected, um, restrictive, painful, mathematical thing where you have to meet these numbers for your cholesterol and for your this, and you have to count these grams and these. Health is being so connected to source that you have life force flowing through you. It means that you are in harmony, that you are resonating at the level of sacred geometry. We that you are connected with the divine, that the water in your body can express what we would see in those images from Masaru Emoto with the crystals. I'm sure you've seen the images with crystals and the of Masaru Emoto. that is what you are creating in your body. You are a terrain, an ecosystem. You are the gardener or the keeper of that terrain. And you can choose to create literally hell in your body, or you can create paradise and heaven through the choices that you make. And the choices are your thoughts, your feelings, your what you eat, how you sleep, how you relate to the sun, to the earth, to nature, to everything. You're an ecosystem, and you have the power. You have the power more than anything out there. And this is a journey for you to come back to you and to your power. Those are the three things that I would.
Those were probably like 100 things already, but they were amazing. It's like, this was such a mic drop. I love that. I can listen to this little part over and over again before I go to sleep and become the most empowered person on the planet. Really, thank you.
And where they can find me is on Instagram, bombshell at bombshell formula, or my website, bombshellformula.com. And if they want to read Power section at the first module of my program, Power, they can download the link in my bio on Instagram, or you can send me a DM, reach out, let's connect. Like I'm here to serve and be your witness, and offer insight for those who want me.
Well, that was really, really fun and very, like, I just enjoyed every moment of it. Thank you for sharing your beautiful wisdom and being here and being such a light in the world.
Thank you, Orion, for doing what you do. Thank you for inspiring others. Thank you for being so authentic. Thank you for letting me take you through that little journey, uh, the food experience, and thank you for putting out this medium for people to connect with different perspectives that trigger their curiosity about themselves. Thank you for that.
And thank you, listeners. Remember to take on the calling into the underworld. Learn to trust your body and make it a space you want to live in. Your ultimate place of safety is within you. Health is being so connected to source that you have life force flowing through you. So take everything you got from this interview and everything that resonated with your body, pun intended, and have a stellar life. This is Orion. Till next time.